Welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm Glenn Caruso, head football coach at the University of St. Thomas, and so happy you tuned in. You know, quite often we get so caught up in the daily grind of work or coaching or recruiting that we don't often take time to reflect. I would encourage everybody to take just a few minutes each day to try and see the bigger picture, to stop and realize that in the end, we're going to be judged on what we choose to believe, who we choose to love, and what we decide to leave behind in the hearts and minds of not just our players, not just our coworkers, but also our children. And remember, if we're doing it right, we're coaching football for life.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on social media at 1Q Leadership.
Our guests today are Tremaine Jackson. Tremaine is the newly named head coach at Colorado Mesa University. Coach Tim Lester, who is the head coach at Western Michigan, and Coach Glenn Caruso, who is our recurring co-host and head coach at the University of St. Thomas. Greetings, gentlemen. Thanks for joining.
Happy to be here, and congrats, Coach Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Now, Tremaine, we have you on because you got this new head coaching job. And on this podcast, we like to focus on leadership and focus on vision and strategic thinking and those kind of things. And if you could tell us, you know, you went into the interview and you had to sell your vision to the university. And I imagine that's not something you came up with the week before going into the interview.
Not at all.
Right? So talk to us a little bit about coming up with that vision and then the actual vision you have for being a head coach.
Yeah, so, you know, first of all, thank you for being here and can't wait to ask you guys my questions. But when I went into the interview, I had interviewed over 8 times on a campus. And so I felt like I had that process down. But like you said, this vision had been built up over 14 years. And so you kind of say, well, someday if I get that opportunity, this is what I would do. Someday I wouldn't. I don't care what day it is. I'm not doing that. And so when I got in that meeting room with those people that the powers that be, as Coach said earlier, that really probably don't know about football, they did know what organizational structure looked like. They understood what if you could sell them what you wanted to do. And so I simply sold them some beliefs that we've always had and at the places that I've been. And I got into coaching. I'm not a preacher, but coaching is like a ministry to me. And so someone did it for me, and I wanted to be able to give back to somebody else. So that's what I told the committee, that our program will be about giving. And we understand that people support people they believe in. But in order for people to believe in you, you've got to go to them. And you've got to build relationships with them and sell them. The other thing I told that committee was, it's our coach's job to love our players. It's our players' job to truly love each other. And that's what we're going to be about in this program. And what I found is, over the time of coaching, whether it's being a coordinator, being a D-line coach, or whatever position of leadership I was fortunate to be in, that if you truly love players, they'll go to the end. And I've been at some places, kind of like these two guys, that we might not have been very athletic compared to our opponents, but because that guy loved the guy next to him and he loved his coach or he loved his institution, then his attributes, as we call them, go up. Where a guy might be 80 speed, I equate things to the video game, but a guy might be 80 speed, well, that love makes him 85. And so I wanted to share that with that committee and prove and show how we could infuse that and infect that into the program. And so,
you know, every place has its own culture. Every athletics director has their values. Every school has its values. Athletics itself has a purpose for being on campus, which should be right to enhance the academic mission of the university. So in your study of Colorado Mesa, how did you sell your vision fitting into their values as a university?
Yeah, well, a lot of people might not know this, but Colorado Mesa is really unique because I've got 2 athletic directors that are co-athletic directors. And so I've searched the country kind of looking for that, and I haven't found anywhere. So I'll go out on a limb and say we might be the only school in the country with co-athletic directors, and Brian Rooks and Chris Morton. So, but our president runs the show, and everybody knows that, and he set a vision into them, and I reported to them, and I report to them. So it was unique from that standpoint already. And so we're really progressive. Colorado Mesa has grown really fast. It used to be a junior college, and we grew into a 4-year college with grad programs. So I knew that the football program was there for a reason. And our president, he wanted to move things forward. So I tried to go with a unique presentation. There's not a lot of guys in our profession that are truly standing on the forefront talking about loving each other and loving their kids, even when the kids don't love them back. And so I wanted to be unique in that aspect because of the places that I've been, like we talked about, in sharing that vision with them, and it fit the overall program. And I thought I got this opportunity because we all aligned and I was a good fit, and they were a good fit for me, especially being a first-time head coach. So I thought that was unique about our situation.
So, Coach, we definitely want to spend our 15 minutes or so being forward-thinking, but you brought up something in the first answer that you had, and that you had been on. This was the 8th interview that you had been on, and I think that's very unique. So if you can just give us some insight as to what it takes to lace the boots back up 8 times or 7 times, right? And what you learned throughout that process that allowed you to hone your skills to be able to be in the situation you're in at Mesa.
Yeah, the first time I went on an on-campus interview, I probably was horrible. I look back at it, I was nervous. I didn't really know who I was talking to. But it's kind of the word you just mentioned, insight. I figured out over those 7 times that I needed to get my insight to people's eyesight, and where they could see what was burning inside of me, or what I felt like was burning inside of me. And so I tried to get it everywhere. I actually named my head coaching manual Insight to Eyesight, just so, hey, go read in this book what I plan to do in this program, and then I want you to be able to feel the passion and the energy and not be false. Like I'm just an old D-line coach that wants to sack the quarterback. And so I want you to know the type of passion that I'll put into this program. And so that's what motivated me. I grew up with my grandmother, and so my mom was there, but grandma really took me, and we were fighters. I didn't have the classy things that a lot of guys have. She was a fighter. And so I wasn't going to quit simply because I got told no. And so we live by a simple theme in my house that someday will turn into today fairly quickly. And so when we got the call, that they kind of kept me going, because I almost not applied to Colorado Mesa just because I had just come back from a head coaching interview at another place 2 weeks prior. And I was like, man, I'm worn out. I don't want to do that again. And just said, man, this could be the one. And so kept fighting on that deal.
Congrats.
Yeah, wow. Thank you.
That's amazing. The one thing that you hit earlier, and you just used the word, is in your interviews is, I think being genuine. Like we've met today, and the first thing that pops in my mind is you come across as an unbelievably genuine person. And that's what I believe ADs, you're selling yourself to them like, this is what I want to do. And when you're nervous early on, you're not, it's like a player that plays his first time. Like, you don't really get to see that guy. He's too nervous. He's trying too hard.
Right.
He's trying to be what you want him to be, and eventually he calms down, the game slows down, and you get to see him. You get to see the genuine him, and I think that's, when it comes to people interviewing and we get to meet with ADs, that you come across, I don't know if you came across that way your first time, but you definitely did this time, and it's believable. It helps in recruiting, and I think that's one of the hurdles for guys that that aren't selling it. They're trying so hard to sell it. Just be yourself, be genuine, and you have that, and which you can see why the ADs they have 2 of them, which is interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Picking up on that, Tim, your first time you had to address the team as you're the head coach, right?
Still haven't yet.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Wait, how long ago did you get hired?
I got hired December 23rd, and you guys will appreciate this. I get hired 2 days before Christmas. The university closes. I want to hire staff. I got to sit on my hands for 2 weeks. I called AD. I said, hey, while y'all sitting around drinking eggnog by the fire, I'm trying to get a staff together, and we got to post these jobs.
HR will be open on the 6th.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We've been there.
So we meet with the team January the 20th at 7 p.m. And I'm waiting for that moment. I've talked to them by phone, through text, but it's nothing like being able to get in front of them.
So that's unique to this interview. So what do you want them to feel in that first meeting?
Coach, I want them to understand that I'm here for them. That's the biggest thing. I told the committee the biggest recruiting visit is that night for me, because we want those guys to know that things are going to be different. We're going in a new direction. but I want them to understand that I'm open and honest about everything. Playing time, whatever. You can come talk to me about anything, but mostly I want you to be able to come talk to me about things off the field. Because football, I don't think it's very hard. You either can or you can't, and if you can't, we got to find a way for you to be able to fit. But the things that happen off the field are the things that are really hard for them to talk about. It was hard for me to go to my coach and say, hey, my grandmother doesn't have any money. I was embarrassed. I didn't know if he could relate to that. And so when I got into coaching, I wanted to become the guy that could. And I knew that there were others, but where I had been, there weren't many. And so I wanted to be different from that aspect. And that's what I wanted to know when we walk in the door. You know, I've been able to put together a pretty good staff, I think. And I've told guys in interviews, you can mess up the X's and O's, we can get that fixed. But I want to know if you're genuine to what we're trying to get done. When you watch us, Coach, I want you to say that is a football team that truly loves each other, that plays with a lot of passion and enthusiasm. And that's what we got to get put in that first meeting.
What an exciting time for you. I think we all look back to your first, and, you know, we all have kids, and you see your daughter and she's 15 or whatever it is, and you're like, you know, I love where we are right now, but I miss this. And you're right at the precipice of that. And so it's going to be interesting to follow your career, your school's trajectory, because like Grandma used to say, someday is going to turn into today, but from this point forward, with what you leave as far as a legacy, today is going to turn into someday and what you leave behind. It'll be interesting to follow that.
You got 2 veteran head coaches here, 2 or 3 stops, couple stops here, both of them successful what they're doing. Do you have any questions for these guys?
I do. I don't know if we got enough time, but I do. You know, my first question would be to you guys, when you hired the staff, when you were going through that process and when you got it finalized, how what was the feeling that you got it, that you felt like you got it pretty right? And I know, Coach, you've made some changes. Yeah. I've kind of followed you, and you had to make some changes. But when you first touched down and you said, all right, I got these 10 guys, I feel this way about it.
Yeah, and you're never going to be, we all want to be perfect, right? That's just what we want to do. But being able to make adjustments on the fly is something you have to do. And that's the hard part of coach. It's a lonely position. And so having to make changes and stuff, every time I interview, I'm getting better at it, you know. And the last time I interviewed was the best time by far, and it was last year, and I had a bunch of spots open. I got rid of a couple guys. I had a couple guys get coordinator jobs, which was really cool. I was happy for them. And so I had like 4 or 5 spots to open up. And I talked to a leadership company that gave me like 150 questions that I could choose from. And I really thought we did the most thorough job of interviewing, because I asked the same questions to all of them, and there were some really unique questions to give me some insight into who they are inside. You know, we talked about, you know, who's your favorite coach, you know, who do you want to emulate? It's interesting because the guy can say Bobby Knight, he's going to tell me a lot about him, right, wrong, or indifferent, or is he going to say Dabo? And I say any coach. You know, you could pick Mike Tomlin. I got a lot of Mike Tomlins. I got a lot of Dungy's. You know, and Tony Dungy's my guy that I would like to be. That's how I picture myself, and just a lot of really good insight questions where I know what I want them to be, but this company really helped me. You know, and I have all those. I could only pick like 6 of them. But I had like 100 to choose from of really good questions that by the end were sitting around as a staff. I wish I would have done this every other time I hired. You know, because I think I would have. Gave me just a couple good the right question can tell you a lot. It's just like when you're talking to your players. Absolutely. You ask the right one, you're going to get more than just an answer, you know. And so I'm getting better and better at it every single time, because you want them to be aligned with you, but you don't want them to all be the same. You want them all types. You know, you want the guy that's a little bit of a hothead, you know, but they all have to love their players. That's like the relationships have to be there, period. Absolutely. You got to have the fun one, the one that's out there running routes still, or playing DB, or thinks he can still throw it. You know what I mean? Like me some days, you know. But you got to have all types, you know, because it's amazing which you don't know. Yes, you want it to be the position coach that they really latch onto, but they need to be someone for that young man to latch onto. He might really respect his, you know, corners coach, but he might have a great relationship with the linebacker coach. That's great. He's got a coach and he's got a mentor. Like, now, if it's the same guy, that's how you draw it up in a book, you know. But you want all types, and you want to see how they work together. And so it ain't an easy job, but it's the most critical job, because they are you're the general. They're the lieutenants. You know, they're the ones that are going to have more and then you're going to pick a leadership council, which are the captains, and then you're going to have the soldiers, and there's going to be layers between you and them. That's the hardest thing we talked about earlier. Hardest thing about going one step further away from the players is, the relationship. It just gets harder because you're in charge of so much more, and hiring those guys is a very, very important part of trying to get a feel for who they are, because they're going to say the right thing. They're going to all answer. Most of the questions aren't hard to answer, so we tried to think like hard ones. They were like kind of weird, but it told me more about who they were.
And knowing what the institutional assets are, because when you say you get to hire 10 guys, you looked at him when he said 10. You didn't look at the Division III guy and say, look at 10. Right. So I think understanding when we got there first, we had 3 full-time guys. Now we've scaled it out, we built it, and that's great. But I think understanding what your assets are, because you might have 4 or 5 or 6 full-time guys, and then you're going to have to find some GAs or restricted guys or part-time guys.
Exact situation.
Yep.
But whichever the scenario is, I do think it starts with trying to find who your first-ring leaders are, the guys that are going to be able to the best of their ability carry your message. Much like you just said 10 minutes ago, we have 2 really capable co-ADs, but the president runs the show, right? So that those people are there to carry that president's message. And I'm a big believer that a lot of people think leadership occurs linearly, and I believe it grows like concentrically, like a tree, right? So if you cut a cross-section of tree and you look at it, you got those first rings, that first year that tree was born or planted, and that's what you're looking to hire. So I think that although Tim is right on with there's got to be diverse personalities, there's got to be guys that fit together, the guys that you're yin to my yin, whatever it might be, at the beginning, I think attitude and culture to carry your message is put at a premium, and especially when you're in a scenario where you don't have 10 or 11 full-time assistants, where you cannot afford to make a mistake on a guy. I think that's probably the biggest thing early. Logistically, one of the things, and I just wrote in my notes to reach out to Tim after this to get those questions, because I can't afford that agency, but I can afford to text him, right?
Because I just mentioned I need those 3.
But I will say,
I'll send them.
I love the idea of who's your favorite coach and why and those types of things, but allowing someone to interview you, and not because, hey, this is a completely democratic, not that, you're still the boss, but to the point that Tim was making earlier, where when you go on an interview and you're trying to please them, you don't get a chance to get to know them. So I always like to turn it and say, there's usually a portion, 45 minutes to an hour, where I would allow them to interview me. And if the kid sits there and says, well, I have no questions, well, I'm saying, how thoughtful are we about this whole process? Because we're going to tie ourselves to each other. And if he opens up and really gives me some good insight, then I think he's a pretty introspective young man.
Now, here's another question I have for you guys. How did you instill your culture into your team when you had your first meeting? What was it like for you guys?
For me, it wasn't a meeting. I'm not a destination guy, so I never try and put any premium on any one moment unless it's between like 1 and 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoons. That's the only thing. No. So ours was, I actually was very intentional with trying to downplay at the beginning and saying, guys, trust is built over long periods of time, very, very slowly, and we're going to build that trust, but it's going to have to be a number of data points in a row. So I didn't want to go in there and set up some big fire and brimstone speech, and a lot of people I think would, if they knew me, they would assume that's the way we did it, but I didn't want them to think it had to be one magical gesture. I mean, right now we live in an era of the superlatives, right? So you flip on ESPN and it's the top 10 biggest hits, right? Or you come home, my 6th grader comes home from school and he wants to talk about the fastest animal or the biggest tree or whatever it is. It's all superlatives. When in reality, mental toughness and being a great playmaker is making the routine play routinely, right? And the same thing is built with trust. I don't think, there might be another interviewer that's actually better than Ty Brown in this world, right? There might be, who knows? But I do know this, over many years, the mental toughness of following through and doing what you're supposed to do is what makes me attracted to the path that he's on, right? I think the same thing applies in the message for the players, because guys, I'm not going to earn your trust today, and you're not going to earn my trust today. Today's going to be step 1 of a huge journey.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing is you're going to pick the things you want to say, and those things have to be the things you say for every time you're with them. You know what I mean? It takes repetitiveness. Relationships aren't they don't just pop up out of nowhere. It's a journey, and it's a fun journey, and it's important for them to know that you're in it with them, and that your door is open, It's important to kind of lay out your vision so they hear it, but you're going to have to lay out your vision every single day. I mean, eventually they're going to know it. They're going to be at your second year in, they're going to ask a question about one of your sayings, and they're going to be able to rattle it off. But that's not going to happen in day one. You know what I mean? So you get them fired up. I mean, once again, if you're genuine and not nervous, which you will be a little nervous, my one at Western was the most nerve-wracking one that I had, because it happened in like 3 hours. I got offered the job, got in the car, drove 3 hours, signed my contract, walked in, boom. And I didn't know I was getting the job till like noon. And I talked to him, maybe it was 5 o'clock I met with him, and I got the call at like 1 o'clock. And with a 3-hour drive in the middle, my wife was driving, I was writing like what I wanted to say. And it just happened really fast. So I'd done it before, which helped. But if you're genuine, I believe, because this is your first chance to build that relationship that you're talking about. You know what I mean? So I don't think, like Coach said, there's nothing, you could go in there and scream a bunch of stuff, and getting them excited on that day. 1 to 4 on Saturdays is what's really going to matter,
Absolutely.
But them knowing that you have their backs, and you're going to do, hard things, and you're going to do it together. And I think those are the messages that it's your first chance of many to hit those things you want to hit. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'll give you a failure of mine that I think could be of help to you. So University of St. Thomas was our second head coaching job. Our first head coaching job was at a little school down the road called McAllister. 23 kids in our first team meeting, and boy, it was a total rebuild. Senior class was 1-29. I think the one win was by forfeit. So we had a long way to go, right? And I think I actually put too much content out there in the beginning. And to Coach Lester's point, the core values are going to want to be reiterated, not just because you have to, but because those are the simplest things that you believe. And someday after a huge win, you're going to beat a great team, and you're going to see one of your players quoted in the paper speaking like it's coming out of your mouth, and you're going to know it hit home. So not doing too much at the beginning that you cannot scale out over time. And when I took my first head coaching job, I think I was just a little too diligent to get too many things out there. And it's like, if you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing. So that might be.
It's like your first meeting at training camp where it's like way too long. You have so much information to give them, and everybody's asleep in the room because it's just like, and your trainer comes in and talks, and your compliance person comes in and talks, and it's just too much.
Yep.
And we had a meeting just the other day that there was too much. We were going over the off season, and I made them, like, when their strength coach went, I finally made everyone get up and walk around. Like, come back in 3 minutes. Like, this has been way too long of a meeting because it's too much content, And you do. That's a great point. Is you want to hit your big things. You want to get them excited about the relationships and what's going to happen, and you're gonna have tons of time to give them everything else.
And being human and fallible, and saying, guys, this is what I believe, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know. I say this all the time because I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I'm not being like tongue in cheek. Like I don't know everything that we're gonna do, but I'll tell you what, we'll figure it out together. And when I know, we'll go. So that'll always come about.
There's some great. I mean, we've had a different core values every place I've been. Because I make it's theirs. I'm not out there taking hits anymore, thank God. But I mean, we had a company come in and work with our core values, same one that worked with Clemson. That's how I got hooked in with Dabo, and it was unbelievable. And they choose, like, what do you want to be about, and it'll be similar because every place you go is going to have you. You know what I mean? But the players are going to be different. If you go to Mississippi State next, it's going to be have different players than you're going to have at Colorado Mesa, So I think I think it's one of the biggest things we've done everywhere I've been is the culture's been ours at that place, including the players, because I didn't really come up and say anything about core value other than what I believe in, and then we are going to come up with the rest. Because once they have ownership in whatever those core values are, now you got them, because it's theirs, it's yours, it's ours. You know what I mean? And giving them some input on that, as opposed to just going and saying, we're going to be this, we're going to be that, we're going to be that. Like, there's certain things that you need to help me. I need your help.
Right.
Like, you open up that door, and that's all you want them to feel. You want to feel excited about what the future is and the relationships, but you want to know that they're going to be a part of it, and then you get to work, because it's going to take time to do that. It'll be an exciting I mean, I don't
Absolutely.
know how much having this much time to prepare. I mean, I had 3 hours, but I don't know if I.
That might have actually, knowing you, that might have served you well, honestly. Really.
I'll talk forever.
No, but I mean, it came off genuine because you had to speak from your heart.
I don't think I would want a month. I think that would be too much.
I'd be twiddling my thumbs,
That
no
would be
doubt.
too much for me.
Well, I've been practicing in cars. I mean, guys, like for years. I'm like, okay, driving from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to Houston, Texas for the holidays, you go, well, what can I do? I'm going to listen to a press conference, then I'm going to practice what mine would be like. Yeah. And I'm going to listen to a team meeting when they follow them around. I'm going to practice what mine. So I feel like I've been practicing this. And I practiced for that press conference for 5 years and didn't say anything that I said in the car. And
There was a press conference. Coach Rivera just got hired a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, right? And if you watch, we sat down as a family and watched the press conference because when our kids, I don't care what our children are going to do in life, but they will be able to speak in front of people and share a message like a preacher. I promise you that. That's the one thing. So we watch press conferences, and so as a family, we watched that one. Now, Coach Rivera is a very thoughtful, very eloquent guy. I mean, just a sharp guy. And if you watch the first 4 minutes, what we were talking about was he had all of his, now he had even been through this before, right? And he had all of his bullet points that he wanted to get through. And he got through all those bullet points and all the things were said. But when the press conference really took off is when he said, so that's who we are, and I'll open it up for questions. And then when there were no bullet points to refer to and all those things, and it was just him speaking from his heart, it's like the whole conversation blossomed. And that's what you're going to be able to do is if you can do it where you don't look at the notes and you'd have, hey, 3 words, right, or whatever it might be, and then just be you, man, right?
Coach said that earlier, that the information that he got from PJ, hey, be you. I was like, yes, I'm going to steal that one too. It's just like PJ texts me.
Forward that text.
All right, well, gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation, Tremaine. I'm sure you probably could ask 1,000 questions to these guys.
I'll get their emails.
But I think I can speak for Coach Lester and Coach Caruso to wish you luck here when you address the team, when you move forward in the spring, when you move forward in the summer, and you had an opening kickoff on your first game. We really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question podcast.
Thanks so much to you guys.
Best of luck.
Looking forward to watching.
That was Coach Tremaine Jackson, newly minted head coach at Colorado Mesa University. We're joined by Tim Lester. He is the head football coach at Western Michigan University, and Coach Glenn Caruso, recurring guest host here on the One Question podcast and head football coach at University of St. Thomas. And of course, I'm Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.